by Srila Prabhupada himself. Because Pradyumna, who was at the time the name selector for Prabhupada, he chose a girl's name for me. Prabhupada looked at Pradyumna, who was the Sanskrit scholar. He said, "What is this nonsense?" So he looked at me, little guy, 20 years old. "Your name will be Kripanidhi Das." Everyone cheered me. Prabhupada came 1965 to America. At that time, there was a big war going on in Vietnam. And all the mainly young men, but young women also, but mainly young men at that time were sent to Vietnam to fight communism. So of course, so many young people were getting killed that a big hippie movement started, big revolt against the American government and so on. America, Canada, North America, like that, we're all, this hippie movement came out of that, and the Beatles, George Harrison, they were singing about peace and love. So at that time, things were very chaotic in America, you can say North America, very chaotic. Sometimes the students would take over the universities. These signs on the wall, "Kill the President of the US." The young people would dress in like Che Guevara. Revolt, revolt, revolt. The drug culture developed in the movement also. We started experimenting with LSD, psychotropic drugs, and marijuana, like this is a part of our culture. And so, we started thinking about life when we were high, like what's the purpose of life? America's supposed to be a great place, but it's a great nightmare. It's like this beautiful cake, but when you go inside the cake, it's full of poison. Everyone's living in these nice suburban houses. Everyone has nice cars. But then when you go inside the house, father and mother fighting, father's alcoholic, the daughter gets pregnant at the age of 50. All these problems are going on. So many problems. Prabhupada in New York, he bought some very small printing machines to start printing magazines. So in 1969, the hippie movement was very big, and they would distribute these very primitive magazines called Back to Godhead. We'd go out in the streets, like New York, Chicago, Houston, Texas, all over all the cities. We'd go and we'd chant in the streets, and then people would crowd it. They say, "Who are these crazy people? They have these sheets on." What are they doing? Shave their head. They gave up all material amenities. We're all living very simply. We're sleeping on the floor. That's the beginning of the movement. We had no money at all. We're just chanting Hare Krishna and distributing these little Back to Godhead magazines. All the hippies, they started saying, "Oh, Hare Krishna, movement of peace and love. This is the movement of peace and love." So we'd make a big feast every Sunday, and all the hippies would come. The house, you couldn't even sit down. The house was full of hippies, and they loved prasadam. And some of the famous musicians, they were also involved with Hare Krishna, like Bob Dylan, Grateful Dead. These are famous bands, and they also like the Hare Krishnas, so they would also come for prasadam. Even Stephen Jobs, he was the founder of Macintosh, Mac computer. He was also a hippie, and he would come to the temple on Sunday in San Francisco and get prasadam. He loved prasadam. He was a student then. So that was the whole atmosphere. John Lennon, George Harrison. So George Harrison and the Beatles, they had a studio in London, England, and they sometimes would give a free concert. They would be on the roof of the building and they'd give free concerts. and they had gone to India, they had gone to Hardwar Rishikesh.
Beatles ashram. Beatles ashram.
Beatles, yeah, they went with Mahesh Yogi.
Mahesh Yogi, yes.
So Prabhupada sent Yamuna, Gurudas, Shamasundar, Malati. Those were the first batch. He said, go to England and, you know, preach to the Beatles. They were so popular that John Lennon said publicly, he said, we're more popular than Jesus Christ. In other words, the whole Western culture and Christianity was being like, was starting to crumble. People stopped going to church. Values, there were no more values. Even Christian values were being compromised. So there's a big change at that time in the Western world. By 1972, Prabhupada had translated, he had brought the Bhagavatam first canto from India, so he was starting to print the big books. Prabhupada started telling devotees, the devotees that were joining, a lot of devotees started joining in places like San Francisco, which was like the center of the hippie movement. Like young people from all over America, Canada, Western Europe, Holland, Germany, all were going to San Francisco. They were called street sadhus because they're just sleep in the streets, get high, and go to Hare Krishna temple, little temple for prasadam. By 1972, many devotees came to see Prabhupada in Los Angeles, San Francisco. Prabhupada was moving around, and he came to Portland. Portland is Oregon, north of California. So you can imagine, like, we were just renting these small houses, and so many devotees would come traveling with vans, and they would descend on this little house. So we'd build like outdoor showers. We'd rip up the fences so we could park our cars in the backyard. Every morning we'd be walking around the neighborhood chanting at 4:30 in the morning. So here's a picture of, you know, a regular American city, and there's these guys with shaved heads and these girls in sari. And they're walking around at like 5 o'clock in the morning in the neighborhood chanting at the top of their lungs, chanting japa. And they're also picking people's flowers because they have to make a garland for Prabhupada. Well, a very exciting time. Srila Prabhupada was a very great devotee, very powerful. And we were just so hungry for devotional service to Krishna. It was so wonderful. We were very young, and we rejected our parents completely. Like, our parents were wondering, where's my son? Where's my daughter? Somewhere in America. Srila Prabhupada would preach from the first canto, Bhagavatam class, prayers of Queen Kunti, Lord Krishna entering Hastinapur, all these chapters about
enjoying his past.
How Lord Yudhishthira Maharaj was ruling the entire world, what leaders should be like. Beautiful part of the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada was speaking every morning. So Prabhupada kept saying, you know, you're distributing these Back to Godhead magazines, but I want you to distribute my big books. He says if people get a big book, they'll keep it in their library at home, their book library and their study library, and it'll be there for many years. Magazine, they might just throw it away or something. 1969, George Harrison was asked by Samasundar to give Prabhupada $19,000 for the first printing of Krishna book. Prabhupada had a couple of disciples. They were brothers, Keshava and Karandar, and they were special forces in the war in Vietnam. When they came back to America, they were pretty well rebellious against the American government. Anyway, they came to the Prabhupada lecture in Los Angeles in the temple, and they had big, boots on, chains, like these were really like Kshatriya type guys. And they walked in the temple room and all the chains were making noise, and they're, like tough guys. Prabhupada said, "Be quiet." They both went like this. Keshava, Prabhupada said, "Distribute my books." So Keshava they got these Krishna books printed. Brahmananda, he got the Krishna books printed in Japan. The Japanese Dai Nippon Company. They're very eager to publish religious books in English language. For them it was a big contract, a big... Keshava, we got some sets. Actually, the sets came, I think it was the second Rath Yatra in San Francisco. The second Rath Yatra in the world outside of India was in San Francisco. And that day, the books came in to the airport, and Brahmananda brought the book to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at it, very good, very good. And then he said, "Distribute it." He didn't even keep it. He said, "Distribute." So they distributed right away to all these. At that time, the hippies accepted the Hare Krishna movement as their religion. So Keshava and some devotees went door to door, knocking on people's doors, and they'd go, "Hi, how are you? How are you doing?" "Yeah, we're from the local meditation center, and George Harrison, the Beatles, he asked us to show these to everyone." And then you would show George Harrison his introduction here. See, from Apple. And so people would buy them right away. So they were amazed that someone, would buy a religious book about God just door to door, And they started selling many, many of these Krishna books. And so they'd run back to the temple. "I can't believe it. I sold 10 Krishna books." It was so exciting. So there's one back to Tom. He joined just in near San Francisco area. And he was quite expert. He would just go to the supermarkets and shopping malls where people go shopping. And he would meet people coming out of the supermarket. And he'd say, "Hey, check this out." He said, "This is good news. Newspapers are full of bad news. This is good news." So he is so expert that, people would just, he'd say, "Yeah, give a donation, give from your heart," and then people would give him $20, $10, $30. And this way he started selling like 20, 30 of Bhagavad Gitas, in one day. And he'd be in a dhoti. Things started to ramp up in 1972. We got the message that Prabhupada was saying, the most important activity, of course, is morning sadhana, but I want you to distribute more and more books, more of my books. And he kept translating. Every evening, he would get up at midnight and start his translation work. So people were reading the books. They'd see the devotees chanting in the streets. Devotees would distribute prasadam to all the different festivals. They have music festivals in the West. And in this way, people were reading Prabhupada's books and becoming devotees. You can just assume that someone's going to join the temple, like every week someone's joining a temple in America, in the West, North America, England, France, Germany. So this movement started just like a fire, like a forest fire, just like, just took off like a fire. We were all young and we all like completely dedicated to Prabhupada. We've given up all our material ambitions, to go to university and become an engineer or a doctor or whatever. And we're just completely into this revolutionary movement of Hare Krishna. So by Christmas of '72, Christmas starts in the West. People start getting panicky around the 1st of November. They start going shopping, like big time, crazy shopping. That's their big thing. Like Christmas means shopping and buying stuff for other people that they throw away after a couple of months. We were going out every day, we were traveling in vans, we would travel all over the USA, Canada, in our vans. And of course, when it got cold, we would go down to the south part of USA.
Мы путешествовали на микроавтобусах по всей Америке, по Канаде. И когда, конечно, становилось холодно, то мы съезжались в южные штаты Америки.
In Los Angeles, it's close to Mexico, so it's quite warm. So the devotees were going out at Christmas, and we suddenly discovered that at Christmas time, everyone's trying to be so nice. They're so, like if you ask them for a donation, you show them anything, oh yeah, for sure, yeah, Merry Christmas. They'll buy anything. So by that time, Ramaswar had joined, and he had moved to Los Angeles, and he was making a newsletter. So every week, the scores would come in from all around, from all the temples. All the temples send in the scores. And everyone was competing to please Prabhupada. So everyone, heavy competition to please Prabhupada. Tripurari decided that, well, you know, a lot of people are, at Christmas time, they travel to their relatives. So why don't we sell books in the airports? So Tripurari dressed up in a suit, and he put like a beard, and he had a walking stick. And he was going around the airport. Los Angeles airport is like a really big airport. So he would stand near the bathroom. So when people were coming out of the bathroom, I mean, security was looking for him all the time. And he was undercover. He had this wig on. And he'd say, hi, hey, listen, you know, we're showing these. It's classical yoga books from India, like that. Oh, yoga, India, oh, okay. And like that, he would be expert, and he'd be selling these books in the airport, undercover. So all of us would get inspired by Tripurari distributing so many Bhagavad Gitas, Bhagavatam first canto. And the more we distributed, the more ecstatic we got, and the more excited we got. And the more excited we got, the more people wanted what we had. Prabhupada came to Los Angeles, and well, before the Christmas time he came, and he called Tripurari into his room, and he said, okay, Tripurari, sell me a book. So Tripurari sold Prabhupada a book. He said, you're probably, hi sir, how are you today? Do you read the newspapers? And you say yes.
Yes.
It's all bad news, right? Well, this is the good news, take a look. And then he put it in their hand, and he'd show all the paintings, all the pictures. He said, this book teaches us how to become peaceful and really happy in life. This is great, it's from India, you know, classical book of India. And they go, oh yeah, and then he'd shake their hand. I hope you enjoy it. No, it's not for sale, not for sale. It's not free though, it's for a donation. In airports are really fertile ground because, first of all, people have money in their pocket. Secondly, they're really happy, they're going somewhere. Tripurari says, give from your heart, give what you want, $50, $100, whatever you want. One friend of mine, he was a famous artist in America, but he was also a big drug dealer. So he was standing on the sidewalk, and he was smuggling marijuana from Mexico, like shiploads, like ships of marijuana from Mexico. And he was standing on the sidewalk in San Francisco, and you know, he had some drugs on him, and the cops were right there, downtown San Francisco, the cops were there, and he was a little bit paranoid. Anyway, this Mataji, she comes up to him and she goes, oh, hi, Hare Krishna, how are you? Look, we got George Harrison wants these books, you know, passing these books out. George Harrison wants you to read this. You know, he looked at the book, and he was really afraid because the cops were watching him. And he was really, so he's like, pulled out a $100 bill. He said, okay, thanks, get out of here, get out of here. Like this, you know? The Mataji goes, $100. Oh, and she goes in her bag, she gives him, starts loading him up with books. And he's like, oh my God, get out of here. Gives her another $100 bill. Get out of here. Oh, and she's giving him all these books. Cops are watching him, he's so fired. Oh my God, anyway, she finally, gave him all these books. He said, what am I going to do with these books? So he went to his home. He had a very beautiful house. Unfortunately, his brother got arrested and went to prison. But he wasn't caught. So he's reading these books at home, and he joined the temple. Became a devotee. So these magical things are happening all over the Western world at that time. So this is pretty wild times, and they have big rock concerts all over the place, everywhere, big rock concerts. So devotees found out that these are the people that would buy our books, these people that love rock music. So we would go to these huge rock concerts. Like I went to one in California, there's so many cities, so we went to one, and suddenly the kids started throwing rocks and punching the police and beating up the police, And a big riot started with the young kids, they're like very, very rebellious. They just started a huge riot against the police. So then the police called the temple, and they knew that Hare Krishna was part of the young people's movement. So they asked us, please come and chant Hare Krishna and make everyone peaceful. So up in Vancouver is just on the border with the U.S., but it's in Canada. But it's a big hippie. Basically, it's a big hippie area. And so the Rolling Stones. You've heard of the Rolling Stones? Yeah. Rockers, Mick Jagger. So they were friends with the Beatles. So they couldn't stand, not taking drugs. But George Harrison was very friendly with them. So anyway, they had a big concert in Vancouver, and then, of course, Rolling Stones would go on tours, so they'd do Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sandy, like this. So anyway, they're in Vancouver, and a riot started, another riot, where the kids are throwing rocks at the police. Police are getting injured. The police called our temple. We had just a temple full of devotees, maybe 50 devotees at a time. Said, can you come and chant, please? Like, there's a huge riot down here with Rolling Stones, And so the temple president was very smart. He said, okay, we'll come and chant, but we want free tickets to go inside the concert. And it was a weekend concert. It was like Saturday and Sunday, 2-day concert. And we want free roaming facility. We want to walk around and distribute prasadam and books inside the concert. It was a big stadium, like 20,000 people or something. So the police said, okay, we'll arrange everything. So we went down there and we chanted, and all the kids became peaceful, and then they let us go inside with tons and tons of books. We had so many books, and then we made prasadam, and we bring it in the prasadam, and there's Mick Jagger on the stage, rocking it out with all these people, and we were set up prasadam tables, we're distributing prasadam, and we're distributing Prabhupada's books. Everyone was getting books. We took over the whole concert. So the last day of the concert, devotees, of course, we would come out of that whole rock scene, but we all were very familiar. So anyway, at the end of the day, on the Sunday, we asked the Rolling Stones, can we use your instruments? We want to do some mantra rock. And they said, yes. So they had a big screen, huge screen. And they were, just showing some kind of media, colors and psychedelic stuff. So we got the slides of Bhagavad Gita. We put it on the screen, and then the devotees got the instruments, and we started electric Hare Krishna. And everyone got up, started chanting Hare Krishna. Oh, it was like 30,000 people. They all got up, Hare Krishna. That was the end of the concert. It was very successful. all the great professors, leaders of society, especially the academic leaders of big universities, they started writing books about the Hare Krishna people. Like, these are the most rebellious young people, and suddenly they're practicing no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. They couldn't believe it. So they wrote books like Hare Krishna Explosion, Hare Krishna and the Counterculture. These are like big scholars, religious scholars at big university, famous university. They're writing all these books. Like, this was a complete like phenomena, because the churches, they couldn't convince us to become Christian. We like rejected, and then they just couldn't believe Prabhupada, how he had transformed all the. Most of us had taken drugs. Most of us, 99%, and we're living the free love life. Free life, free sense gratification, free drugs, hippie life. We had rejected. Most of us grew up in what we call middle class house, middle class life, where your father has a good job, you have a nice house. Those are the people that were rejecting the whole American, the American the American model. Get a nice house, have a couple of kids, go to work, come home, go on vacation. It's like we rejected it all. So at that time, the scholars and people were very shocked how these rebellious young people became, sadhus. Like, I was a brahmachari for 11 years. It's like amazing, my mother was amazed, You're celibate for 11 years? How's that possible? Like, I couldn't believe it.